King Felipe reportedly looked completely calm during that last public appearance with Princess Leonor, but honestly, the moment that stayed with me was when she stopped smiling the second the cameras turned away. It lasted maybe 2 seconds. Most people probably missed it. But if you've watched royal families long enough, you start noticing those tiny cracks, the moments where duty disappears and exhaustion slips through. And it made me wonder something I genuinely can't stop thinking about. What does Leonor keep to herself? Not from the public, from her father. Because I think there are things Princess Leonor will never fully tell King Felipe VI, not because she doesn't trust him, but because some pressures are impossible to explain to the person who helped build the institution causing them. And that's where this story becomes far more emotional than people realize. While Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, still represent that polished, keep calm and carry on, royal image in Britain, Leonor feels different lately. More internal, more careful, almost like someone trying to carry tradition and escape it at the exact same time. And honestly, I think that conflict is becoming visible. Because the future Queen of Spain may already understand something the palace doesn't want to admit. The modern world no longer protects royal children emotionally. It consumes them, and I think Leonor knows that better than anyone around her. Now here's the part nobody says out loud. King Felipe probably believes he's preparing his daughter for greatness. But what if Leonor secretly worries the crown could cost her a normal life entirely? That's not rebellion, that's fear, and I think there's a difference. If you're new to Leonor's story, subscribe, I post every day. Because the more I watch how the palace presents Leonor in 2026, the more I feel like we're seeing two completely different stories happening at once. Publicly, she looks disciplined, confident, prepared, but privately, I sometimes get the feeling she's trying to figure out whether she belongs more to herself, or to Spain. And honestly, that's a terrifying thing for someone her age to carry. Especially because King Felipe of all people probably understands the weight of monarchy better than anyone alive around her. That's the tragedy of this dynamic. He loves her deeply. You can see it in the way he looks at her during military ceremonies or official events. There's real pride there, real protectiveness. But he also represents the institution that silently took away her ability to ever live anonymously. And maybe that creates conversations they never fully finish. Because imagine trying to tell your father, "I'm overwhelmed by the destiny you prepared me for." How do you even say that without sounding ungrateful? That's why I think Leonor keeps certain emotions hidden. Not because she's cold, because she's protecting him too. And honestly, I think that's something a lot of daughters do with fathers they admire. They edit their pain, they soften their fears, especially when the father already carries enormous pressure himself. But here's my hot take. I don't think Leonor's biggest fear is becoming queen. I think her biggest fear is disappearing inside the role. There's a difference. And if you pay attention carefully, you can almost see her trying to preserve parts of herself before royal life defines everything permanently. That's why stories about university, friendships, military training, or public appearances matter so much more than tabloids pretend. Those moments are not random. They're clues. Clues about what kind of person she's trying to remain underneath the institution. And honestly, I think King Felipe sees more than people realize. But maybe fathers and daughters inside monarchy have an unspoken agreement. You don't say the scariest parts out loud. Because once you say them, they become real. Now let me explain something I think most royal coverage completely misunderstands. People often assume the hardest part of royalty is public criticism. I disagree. I think the hardest part is emotional isolation. Especially for heirs. Because nobody around you interacts normally anymore. Friends become cautious. Staff become formal. The public becomes obsessed. And eventually you stop knowing which version of yourself is authentic and which version was trained into you. That messes with people psychologically. And I sometimes wonder if Leonor secretly keeps those thoughts away from Felipe because she knows how guilty it might make him feel. Because remember, King Felipe didn't invent monarchy. But he inherited it. And now Leonor inherits the consequences. That's heavy, especially in 2026, when younger generations question institutions more aggressively than ever before. Honestly, younger audiences today don't automatically respect titles anymore. They respect emotional honesty. That changes everything for royal families. And I think Leonor understands that shift instinctively. Which is why she often seems more careful about image than older royals were at her age. Not fake careful, emotionally strategic. There's a difference. And weirdly, this is where someone like Mr. Beast becomes an interesting comparison. Seriously, Because modern audiences connect to people who feel emotionally accessible. That applies whether you're a creator, celebrity, athlete, or future queen. The old model of royalty depended on distance. The new model depends on relatability. Leonor seems caught between those two worlds every single day. And honestly, I don't envy her at all. Because imagine waking up every morning knowing your future has already been publicly decided. Most young adults experiment with identity privately. Leonor experiments under international observation. That changes your personality whether you want it or not. And maybe that's what she never fully tells Felipe. Maybe she never says how lonely it can feel to have millions of people watching a version of you they think they know. Or how exhausting it must be constantly performing emotional balance. Strong, but not intimidating. Elegant, but not distant. Modern, but respectful. Human, but symbolic. That balancing act sounds impossible to me. And honestly, I think the palace sometimes underestimates how mentally draining this all is for younger royals. Because social media destroyed the old separation between public and private life. Now the audience never leaves. One expression becomes a viral theory. One awkward moment becomes endless commentary. And Leonor has grown up inside that reality from the beginning. King Felipe didn't. That generational difference matters more than people think. Felipe was trained for institutional pressure. Leonor is being trained for emotional exposure. Completely different challenge. And maybe that's why she seems more introspective lately. More controlled. Sometimes even quieter. Not because she lacks confidence. But because she's thinking constantly. About image. About responsibility. About identity. About freedom. And honestly, I think the saddest part is this. She probably can't fully explain any of it to her father because he'd immediately try to fix it as a king, when maybe she just needs someone to hear it as a father. That distinction changes everything. And look, I'm not saying there's some dramatic secret conflict happening behind palace walls. Actually, I think the opposite. I think their relationship is probably built on enormous mutual respect. But sometimes respectful relationships hide the deepest emotions, because neither side wants to become the other person's burden. That happens in normal families too. Now multiply that by monarchy, by history, by duty, by international scrutiny. Suddenly silence becomes survival. And honestly, the more I think about it, the more I believe this is why Leonor's public image feels so emotionally compelling right now. People sense restraint, people sense responsibility, but they also sense someone trying very hard not to lose herself underneath the expectations. And maybe that's what makes audiences connect to her. Not perfection, pressure. Because deep down, people recognize that feeling. The feeling of carrying expectations you never fully chose. The feeling of protecting the people you love by hiding parts of your struggle. The feeling of smiling publicly while privately trying to figure yourself out. That's human. And I honestly think that humanity, not the crown itself, may become Leonor's greatest strength in the years ahead. Because if she ever learns how to balance honesty with duty, she could become something modern monarchies desperately need right now. A royal people emotionally believe.